Welcome to today's Daily Walk in Wisdom. Wisdom is the answer to everything. So it's so exciting that you have decided to join the adventure of growing in the wisdom of God. Today, in Psalm 78, we're looking at a maskil. It's a psalm of enlightenment written to make us wise. Psalm 78 represents a historical panorama of God's redemptive interaction with his people. German theologians call this Heilgeschichte, salvation history, meaning God's saving activity throughout all time. You can't always see the end from your present situation, but God has an end game in mind. God is working things out over centuries and over millennia. And you may not see the point to what you're going through, but there are some things we have to go through in order for God to get us all to where he's taking us. There's a song I've heard recently. It goes like this. He never told us that it would be easy. He said suffering would come, but he gives me peace. And I've been singing that over and over again because there's some things that we go through that are like suffering. Jesus, he never said that he'd make things easy for us, but he did say that he would give us peace. Sometimes when you're going through all of the seemingly inconsequential and irrational circumstances that take place in your life and in the world around us, and all of the apparently disconnected events that we see on the news and the juxtaposition of tragedy and success, you wonder what's going on with all of this. What's the meaning behind it all? Well, God is working all things together for the good of us, all of us, so that his redemptive plan can be fulfilled. Now it says in this psalm in verse 2, I will open my mouth in parables. I will utter hidden things. Hidden things, or as the King James Version reads, dark things or mysteries. So Asaph in this psalm provides, it's a very long psalm, Asaph provides us with a insight into Israel's history, and he shows us things there that we would never identify if we were to simply read the historical context. He identifies the fields of Zoan as where God dealt with Pharaoh. He tells us just how much water came out of that rock, so much water that it was like a sea in the desert. Imagine that. He tells us that Israel replied, he may be able to bring water out of a rock, but can God spread a table in the desert? He's the one who tells us that manna is angels' food, the bread of the mighty ones. Beyond many of these fascinating insights, Asaph is helping us see that in spite of all of man's failure and sin, and in spite of the multiplied times that we've rejected God's plans and purposes, nothing, absolutely nothing, can stop God's redemptive process. Through it all, God comes up with the answers that turn our catastrophes into his glory. God is going to turn your issues and your problems and your dilemmas and your catastrophes into his glory. God is so awesome that he can take our worst situations and make something beautiful and powerful and redemptive out of them. He gives us beauty for ashes and the oil of joy for mourning. And speaking of mystery, isn't it a mystery how a child born in the tiny town of Bethlehem 2,000 years ago can affect everything? And the ramifications of that birth continue to ripple across the universe. But that's exactly how God works. There's undoubtedly mysteries taking place in your life right now. Hidden things, things you may not even know are going on. And that is what God is doing, working things together. You can't see the reason behind it, but don't you fret. He gives you peace. And then in verse 67 to 68 of this psalm, I told you it was a long psalm. In verses 67 to 68, he says, he rejected the tents of Joseph. He didn't choose the tribe of Ephraim, but he chose the tribe of Judah. What's he talking about? Well, Shiloh was in Ephraim. That's where they kept the tabernacle. Shiloh means peace or tranquility. But it also means peace in the midst of pain. God says there's coming a time where he rejects Shiloh, where he rejects Ephraim. He rejects peace in the midst of pain, but he chooses Mount Zion. That means he's going to take you from a place of peace or tranquility in the middle of pain to the mountains of praise. That's Judah. Judah means praise and worship. He's going to take you from the place where you're having peace in the midst of pain to the place where you are on the mountaintop in worship and praise. That's what he's going to do for you. That's his promise to you. That's what he's going to bring into your life. You might be struggling. You might be facing dilemmas, confusing things. You don't know what's taking place. God says he's working everything together to bring you out of that place where you're in struggle to the place where you're on the mountaintop. He's going to bring you from the place where you have to find his peace in the midst of pain to the place where you're just lifting up your hands and worshiping and praising him and giving him all the glory because you've got the victory on the mountains of God. There you go. God bless you. More wisdom coming through tomorrow.